Well, it's the end of the third, fourth place match day here at Detroit Finals on Saturday. I'm joined right now by Tafo from CLG. Of course, this coverage brought to you by Alienware. Tafo, you and I worked together at Yahoo, but now you work at CLG, and I know you started working there last year, first in a biz dev role, but now you're in a different role. Do you want to give a little context on what you do at CLG?
Yeah, sure. So I moved in, and my title is head of data and analytics, and that's something I was known for a lot in the Smash community. And so they thought it would be a really good move. I'm a numbers guy. I love building spreadsheets and databases just to work with and to get to my own conclusion on things. And so they thought it would be a really good fit with all our esports teams.
Okay, so during the press conference, I asked a question because a lot of people have been telling me that perhaps part of CLG's success this year has been in part due to some of the information and work that you've been doing on the league side. I know you work with other teams as well, but maybe you can give me a little bit of context because some of the guys gave me some answers, but what is it that you do on the league side?
One of the big things that I want to get away from and just to free up our coaching staff and our analyst Primary, who's doing also a really good job that doesn't get a lot of limelight, is they did a lot of manual labor on spreadsheets, and then I just kind of asked like, what's your process and can I automate it? So instead of them spending 15 to 20 hours a week on things, like they can get data on any team they want within 5 minutes. And so just to save them time so they can focus more on working on other things with the team and just have a bunch of data that they can just access at any given time about any given player.
Sure. And so for a lot of people at home that are watching this, they might not really, they're just like, okay, they can get data. What does that even mean? I don't know if you have a real world example or if you can sort of hone in on like what that looks like on the CLG side.
So I think one of the big things, I mean, draft is so important in this, and so understanding where fall offs are and breaking points. So this is an older patch, so I'll give you an example. I think there was a huge debate on how Silas and Rise were played and prioritized in an earlier patch. We thought Rise was better. But then I showed data and said like Silas actually, like when you have both of them, if you pick Silas, like the Silas team wins 88% of the time. And so I actually shifted our team's reception on Silas and Rise and said like you can't pick Rise here if they get Silas. That's a really awful trade. So using data to work with the team and just to come to different conclusions. Sometimes players or coaches, they might have their own ideas of how the game is played or what leads to a win that actually may not be correct or the data says otherwise. So it gives them an extra set of eyes or information that they could use to come to like a good conclusion about how the game should be played.
So if people are saying right now, CLG has really good drafts or something, it sounds like a lot of that might be coming from the data that you're able to contribute to the decisions they're making there.
I think for the most part, like Irene and the team do a pretty good job. I would say 95% of the time when we decide on what to play, Irene gets it right. It might just be the 5%, and sometimes 5% makes the difference. But like, I just might talk to Stixay, I might talk to Wiggly and say like, I know you really like this for X, Y, and Z reasons, but here's what the data says, and it's actually not that good.
What's their reaction normally, right? Because pro players are often based off of instincts. They're like, well, screw your data. Like I've been playing all this solo queue and this matchup is totally mine.
Well, I've worked with Mango, who's like the most difficult player to work with, and so like through my relationship with him, it's just a kind of a gradual like shift where you kind of like have to incept it, where you might go like watch a game with the player and they might go like, yeah, like this champion got so much, but it didn't really do anything, and that kind of weaves its way into a narrative, and I might go like, hey, by the way, here are the stats, and they might be convinced from after that.
So you're really tricking them into thinking it's their own opinion.
Yeah, because I think every player they have their own set of eyes based on role. Like bot lane wants a winning matchup, top lane wants a winning matchup. Everybody wants winning matchups, but sometimes you ask yourself like, what does that really mean? And so like I try to challenge like what like having a good matchup actually means for the team.
Is there other stuff that you do outside of pick and ban? I mean, I know during the press conference, Weldon mentioned that you can run like a full simulation on certain concepts that they have or whatever using algorithms. That sounds so insane to me, but I'm kind of curious about it.
So Weldon does a really good job exploring initial topics, and then if we have the data provided by Riot or I get the data myself, we might go like, okay, is there any correlation between if these events happen with winning? And sometimes we might go like, oh wow, there's a high correlation that if these events happen for a team, then they win. And Weldon is able to present to the team like, hey, like this is the data we have that supports it, and that's how he gets like team buy-in. So a lot of it comes from just discussing and talking with Weldon and Irene.
So it almost sounds like a lot of the data you're using is almost you get it, and in a lot of situations, it's just to convince the pro players to do the right thing that they should be doing all along.
Yeah, and it's just to just bring an extra set of eyes. I like to say data is its own pair of eyes. Sometimes we don't go for it because there's like a good explanation. Data is faulty. It's not perfect, and it's also incomplete. But it just confirms certain things, or if even if the data is bad, we might be able to give a good explanation why. But it just kind of sets the course straight for us.
I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know everybody wants to go out and celebrate, but I do want to ask, data from what I've heard from people that work in the league space or with league data, it's like really weird because like there's some really good data and then there's data you just can't get at all. I'm kind of curious, like in your mind, somebody who's working on the data end of this, like what does the data space look like for competitive League of Legends right now?
So coming from Smash, I appreciate anything that Riot gives me because I literally work with nothing from Smash. So I'm already from this like I have this emotional gratitude position towards League. The box store data, like in NBA, you have like the number of rebounds, assists, and all that, and so like it could be handy, but I would really love for there to be automated like in-game stuff with positioning, and I think League is slowly getting there with like stuff like jungle proximity or like forward percentage or like pressure, but there's still a lot of things that can't be solved by data just because we can't get it.
All right, so right now, would you say it's good or bad or like? I mean, I don't know.
It could be better. I mean, again, like it doesn't provide like a perfect scope. I think the eye test and the coaches and the players, they provide way better insight than what data can give, but the data is there to support other things.
Do you ever talk to Riot about this stuff and say like, please give me this?
I make fun of Blastoise whenever I see him, and just like, yo, like this sucks. They're working towards it. They're getting better every split, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future because I think other orgs, like I think we saw Kays who used to work for TL, like I think those kind of people that can work with data are going to be like more and more valuable as Riot gets a lot like more data.
Well, I know Cloud9 has some like data partnership with Microsoft around all this stuff. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I've heard about it, and like historically, before I moved on to CLG, like there were some other like kind of third-party like analytics sites that were interested in hiring me. So I'm aware that there are a bunch of different groups that are trying to crack League of Legends.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for the interview. Anything you want to say to anybody out there that's that's interested in this stuff? Like, where can they find out more about it, or I don't know, whatever.
I just think just someone to sports, there's going to be room for analysts in the future, and I think more esports that get more infrastructure, like they're going to want you guys. So if you're like in the engineering or STEM fields, like, and you want to get into gaming, like more opportunities will come in the future. Also, just want to shout out to Weldon, Irene, Primary, and the staff for being willing to go with analytics. I don't think I would have as much sway if they weren't as open to it.
So if somebody wants a job doing this, they should just tweet at you, is what I'm hearing.
Tweet at and just provide value. So if you have reports or insights, just constantly release content, and eventually, like if you put out good work, like you'll eventually get an interview somewhere.
Thank you so much for the interview, Tafo. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things esports right here on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching that interview. I hope you really enjoyed it. Detroit has been sick. Brodin did not film any B-roll here. He's not good at his job, but unfortunately, so you can't see what it's like, but I promise you it's been fantastic. And again, it wouldn't be possible without Alienware sending me out here. They're also sending Brodin and I to Seattle. Maybe he'll actually get some B-roll of that because we're going to be going to PAX this coming weekend, doing some TFT stuff there at their booth. So be sure to drop by if you're in the area, and stay tuned for some really cool stuff coming from them around Intel Gamer Days in just a short time. They're going to have some cool deals. I can't tell you yet because I don't know, but I've heard they're going to be really cool.